we are going to see about transport of gases. This is going to be a very mini session. Okay, so lot of us get confused about the transport of gases and sigmoid curve. So I'll read from here to here line by line and I'll explain it. Like previous video, I have made it very simple for you to understand. Okay, so physiology will be a separate chapter. Physiology will be a separate subject in medicine first year. So let us start the class. Transport of gases. Blood is the medium of transport for oxygen and carbon dioxide. About 97% of oxygen is transported by RBCs in the blood. The remaining 3% of oxygen is carried in a dissolved state through the plasma. Nearly 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is transported by RBCs, whereas 70% of it is carried as a bicarbonate. About 7% of carbon dioxide is carried in a dissolved state through plasma. See, each and every line is important. Okay, so blood is the medium of transport for oxygen and carbon dioxide. I'll explain the transport of gases. Okay, in simple way. See, what are the two gases which are transported in the human body? We all know oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen, so transport of gases means only two gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen we are inhaling and carbon dioxide is we are exhaling carbon dioxide. Okay, so we take oxygen in and we release carbon dioxide out. So we know from the atmospheric air we take oxygen, but from where carbon dioxide comes? It comes from the tissues of the body. So oxygen we inhale oxygen. Why? Because it is required for energy production. So oxygen is inspired and it is transported to where? To the lungs. From lungs it reaches heart. Heart pumps it to all the tissues of the body tissues. For example, brain, liver, stomach, pancreas, intestine, kidneys, reproductive organs, all parts of your body. I think that we don't need to explain all these things separately. We have very short time. So it means all body tissues. Okay. So oxygen, we inhale oxygen, it reaches the alveoli of the lungs. At the alveolar level, oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange takes place. So from the lungs, it reaches heart. Okay. From the heart, it is pumped to all parts of the body. Through this way, oxygen is supplied and the oxygen demand is met. Okay. So next, carbon dioxide. So all these tissues take oxygen for the energy production, and when they produce energy, there is a byproduct which is formed, that is carbon dioxide, which the body cannot hold. Okay, the carbon dioxide has to be released out. Carbon dioxide should not be retained within our body. So the byproduct which is formed as a result of metabolism, carbon dioxide formed due to metabolism, should be exhaled out or it should be released out. So again, the carbon dioxide is taken via blood and the blood reaches the lungs. At the inside the lungs, at the alveolar level, the carbon dioxide is released. Okay, so oxygen is inhaled and carbon dioxide is exhaled. So transport of gases means oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen reaches the lungs through the blood and it reaches tissues. Same way, from the tissues, the carbon dioxide which is formed as a result of metabolism is taken by the blood and it reaches lungs. From the lungs, it is exhaled out. Okay, carbon dioxide is released out. So blood is which is the medium of transport for oxygen and carbon dioxide? Blood. Now we say oxygen and carbon dioxide travels in the blood. Okay, now these points mention the form which carbon dioxide and oxygen is traveling inside the blood. Okay, so about 97 transport of first I will mention only transport of oxygen. Transport of carbon dioxide I will speak when I talk about transport of carbon dioxide. Here the remaining 3 points. Okay, first we will see about transport of oxygen. In the blood, transport of oxygen takes place with the help of red blood cells and plasma. Okay, so 97% of oxygen is carried by red blood cells and the 3% is carried in the plasma in a dissolved state. Okay, so 97% and 3%. All these percentages are very important. Transport of oxygen in the blood is by means of red blood cells 97%, and plasma in the dissolved state 3%. When I say red blood cells, inside the red blood cells what you have? You have hemoglobin. Blood is red in color, you all know. That coloring pigment is nothing but hemoglobin. So heme part, this is the iron part and this is the protein part. The iron part gives red color to the blood. So hemoglobin, red colored pigment which contains iron, carries 97% of oxygen. So oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. I said here, so at the lung level oxygen combines, okay, combines with the blood. So what happens? We inhale air, it reaches lungs at the alveoli. Only at the level of alveoli gaseous exchange takes place. Okay, only at the level, this is one important MCQ, only at the level of alveoli gaseous exchange takes place, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen is sent to the tissues to meet the demand, and carbon dioxide is from the tissues they are delivered to alveoli. Okay, from alveoli the lungs will exhale out. Okay, so oxygen is sent to the tissues through blood. In the blood you have hemoglobin. So when you know alveoli is like this grape like structures, okay, bunches of grape like structures. Around the alveoli you have network of blood vessels called as capillaries, small blood vessels which surrounds the alveoli, each alveoli. So through these capillaries, when the blood passes through around the alveoli, there is quick exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen is released to the blood and carbon dioxide is released out. Okay, so this oxygen in a fraction of second it binds with the hemoglobin. See, hemoglobin is like a bus. Okay, imagine hemoglobin is a bus which takes up the passengers. Passengers are no one but oxygen. Okay, so each hemoglobin bus can take 4 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so hemoglobin helps in oxygen to transport to the different tissues of the body. Okay, this acts like a bus and oxygen binds with the hemoglobin. When together they combine, they form oxyhemoglobin. You call it as oxyhemoglobin. This is a reversible reaction. Okay, so this part, oxygen plus hemoglobin combination, takes place at the level of alveoli. It forms oxyhemoglobin. When it reaches the tissues, that is the reversible reaction has to take place. That is oxyhemoglobin, when it reaches the tissues, it again dissociates to form oxygen plus hemoglobin. That is the meaning of reversible. Okay, if it is irreversible, then how can the oxygen be delivered to the tissues? Okay, so oxygen plus hemoglobin combines at alveoli, they form oxyhemoglobin. When this one oxyhemoglobin reaches the tissue level, again the oxygen separates from hemoglobin and it is supplied to the tissue. Okay, so this is a reversible reaction. All these things are very important MCQs. Oxygen and hemoglobin is a reversible reaction. It forms oxyhemoglobin. When it reaches the tissues, oxygen again separates from hemoglobin and oxygen is supplied to the tissues. Hemoglobin is again circulated to the blood. Okay, so each hemoglobin, how many molecules can be carried by the hemoglobin? It carries 4 molecules of oxygen. This is another one important MCQ. So this binding of oxygen with hemoglobin depends on 4. Okay, 4 factors: partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. All these are important MCQs. Okay, so here I will read. Hemoglobin is each and every line I have covered. Hemoglobin is a red colored iron containing pigment present in the RBCs. Oxygen can bind with hemoglobin in a reversible manner to form oxyhemoglobin. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry a maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. Binding of oxygen with hemoglobin is primarily related to partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. These are the other factors which can interfere with this binding. Now we said oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. So this combination, okay, this combination is affected by 4 factors. Partial pressure of oxygen is the primary factor, that is, this is the first factor. Okay, primary factor means this is the first factor which is very, very important for binding of oxygen with hemoglobin. Next are partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. This is another important MCQ. So when there is another important MCQ is sigmoid curve. This is also called as oxygen dissociation curve. Dissociation means separation of oxygen, okay? Separation of oxygen from hemoglobin. Sigmoid curve or oxygen dissociation curve. This is an S-shaped curve. See, this is an S-shaped curve. This is also called as oxygen dissociation curve. It is obtained when you plot percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen with partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, see, here they have mentioned partial pressure of oxygen and here percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. So when they plot against these two factors, they get a S-shaped curve or a sigmoid curve. You call it as oxygen dissociation curve. What is the importance of this curve? They are useful in, because of this curve, you can study the effect of factors like partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and on binding with oxygen with hemoglobin. Okay, so here they have mentioned this. They can ask the other name of sigmoid curve. Okay, sigmoid curve is obtained by plotting two factors. They can ask this when percentage of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen is plotted against PO2. This curve is called oxygen dissociation curve. It is useful in studying the effects of factors like PCO2, that is partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration on binding of oxygen with hemoglobin. Next, what they have said is in the alveoli where there is high PO2, partial pressure of oxygen, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide, lesser hydrogen ion concentration and lower temperature, the factors are all favorable for the formation of oxyhemoglobin. So from here to here, they mentioned the factors which is favorable for formation of oxyhemoglobin. Here, this is another MCQ. In tissues, what happens? There is low PO2, high PCO2, high hydrogen concentration and higher temperature. Okay, these conditions are favorable for dissociation of oxygen from oxyhemoglobin. So these two are important MCQs. What are the factors which favor the binding of oxygen with hemoglobin? What are the factors which favor the dissociation or separation of oxygen from hemoglobin? This clearly indicates that oxygen gets bound to hemoglobin in the lung surface and gets dissociated at the tissues. Okay, so I have written it separately, these two factors. Factors favoring the formation of oxyhemoglobin at the alveoli level. Okay, so at the alveolar level only you have oxygen. So obviously this is a place where oxyhemoglobin will be formed. So what are all the factors here? High PO2, partial pressure of oxygen is high. There is one easy way to remember. When there is high partial pressure of oxygen, all the three factors will be less. Okay, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide, lesser hydrogen ion concentration and lower temperature. The exact opposite will be in the tissue level. Low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, high hydrogen ion concentration and high temperature. Okay, so in alveoli, what happens? Alveoli, see, without seeing you can write this. Okay, so alveoli and tissues, we should apply the logic. Okay, because we inhale air, it reaches alveolar level, it will be full of oxygen. Okay, the oxygen content will be more at the alveolar level. So now I write partial pressure of oxygen is more. Now what are all the other three factors? Partial pressure of carbon dioxide. The other factor is hydrogen ion concentration. The other factor is temperature. All these three will be low. Okay, so at the tissue level, due to metabolism, metabolic activity, the byproduct partial pressure of carbon dioxide will be more. and the partial pressure of oxygen will be less, right? The opposite. So when there is one more relationship with partial pressure of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration. When the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high, the hydrogen ion concentration will also be high. The temperature will also be high. Okay. So at the alveolar level where the oxygen content is high, the partial pressure of oxygen will be high. At the tissue level where there is high metabolic activity, the byproduct formed will also be high, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will be high. Now you follow the partial pressure of carbon dioxide for hydrogen and concentration and temperature. All these three will be less at the alveolar level. At the tissue level, the partial pressure of oxygen will be less and all the three will be high. We can remember this way also. So when there is when the partial pressure of oxygen is high, it forms oxyhemoglobin. Okay. This means oxygen, all these factors helps the oxygen to bind with hemoglobin. So at the tissue level, all these factors helps in forming dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. That is, all these factors helps in separation of oxygen from hemoglobin. All these factors favoring dissociation of oxygen from hemoglobin. From this what we can understand, oxygen binds to hemoglobin at the lung level and it gets dissociated at the tissue level. Dissociation means separation. So oxygen gets separated from hemoglobin at the tissue level. Then only oxygen can be supplied to the tissues, right? So oxygen dissociation occurs at the tissue level, whereas oxygen formation occurs at the alveolar level. So once again we will quickly refresh it. Transport of gases means oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen we inhale and carbon dioxide we exhale. The transport of gases occurs by the medium. The medium is blood. Okay. This is the medium of transport for gases. So transport of gases, oxygen, it reaches the lungs. Through the blood it reaches the tissues. Same way from the tissues, carbon dioxide travels through the blood and it reaches lungs from where it is exhaled out. So carbon dioxide is formed as a result of metabolism at the tissue level. Next you have transport of oxygen inside the blood. You have RBCs and plasma. 97% of oxygen is carried by the hemoglobin and 3% it is carried by the plasma in the dissolved state. Hemoglobin is the red colored pigment which contains iron. At the alveolar level, oxygen binds with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. This is a reversible reaction. At the tissue level, the oxygen from hemoglobin gets separated or dissociated and the oxygen is supplied to the tissues. Hemoglobin can carry 4 molecules of oxygen at maximum. Binding of oxygen with hemoglobin depends on partial pressure of oxygen. This is the primary deciding factor, and the other 3 factors are partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. Okay. Next is the sigmoid curve or oxygen dissociation curve. This is an S-shaped curve. When you plot these 2 factors, that is percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen against partial pressure of oxygen, you get an S-shaped curve or oxygen dissociation curve. You call it a sigmoid curve. This sigmoid curve is useful in studying the effect of factors which we have mentioned here, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, hydrogen and concentration, on binding of oxygen with hemoglobin. Okay, so oxygen, the factors which favors the formation of oxyhemoglobin are high partial pressure of oxygen, low partial pressure of carbon dioxide, lesser hydrogen ion concentration and lower temperature. This occurs at the alveolar level. At the tissue level, the exact opposite, that is low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, because this is the metabolic product which will be high at the tissue level, high hydrogen ion concentration and high temperature. These factors help the dissociation of oxygen from oxyhemoglobin. Now, oxygen From these two factors you can understand oxygen binds with hemoglobin at the alveolar level to form oxyhemoglobin. It is carried by the blood to the tissues to meet the oxygen demand. There at the tissue level the oxygen gets dissociated from hemoglobin and oxygen is utilized for the production of energy and hemoglobin is again released into the blood. Next, this is another important MCQ. Every 100 ml of oxygenated blood can deliver 5 ml of oxygen to the tissues under normal physiological conditions. This is also one important MCQ. Then I wish to mention one more point, that is what is the meaning of partial pressure. Partial pressure. Suppose if I mean partial pressure of oxygen means you take a container, okay, fill a mixture of gases. For example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, okay, you put fill the container with all these three gases, mixture of these gases. The pressure exerted by each one of the gas, okay, the pressure exerted by oxygen, pressure exerted by carbon dioxide, pressure exerted by hydrogen. Pressure means force, okay, you can say, otherwise you can understand it that way. So the pressure exerted by each one of the gases is called as partial pressure, okay. So when you take a mixture of gases, you fill the gases container with the mixture of gases, the pressure exerted by each one of these gases is called the partial pressure of each one of the gas, okay. Partial pressure of oxygen means the pressure exerted by oxygen in the mixture of gas. Partial pressure of carbon dioxide means the pressure exerted by carbon dioxide in this mixture of gas inside the container. I hope you all understood this. So tomorrow in the mini session we will again meet with the simple tabular form for transport of carbon dioxide. Do like, share and subscribe Neet Cognition.